Welcome, friend, to the modern mystic. Let the day become distant as we begin this gentle breathing, returning to the quiet space inside and out. You are invited not to learn or strive, but to remember. There's nothing to carry, nothing to fix. Tonight we drift into the candlelit world of Nikola Tesla, not the electric legend, but the quiet man, alone with a notebook and a single steady flame. Each sketch a slow exhale, each page a gentle silence. He waited by the window, the shadows slip across the walls. The city hums on the edge of hearing, distant, softened by velvet curtains. The night welcomes you, and Tesla too. On this slow walk there is no hurry. Candlelight flickers. The air cools. Ink waits on untouched paper, drying before the first thought arrives. He listens to the hush between breaths. Your body settles, sinking into warmth. The world outside loses its edges. Nothing is urgent here. This is a space for forgetting, for seeing again what is simple, slow, ordinary. Welcome to the quiet. Tonight you walk gently beside Tesla, not to chase his greatness, but to taste the peace he found in each silent evening. Let everything else fall away, until the only sound is a pencil tracing circles by candlelight and the hush of your own exhale. He waited by the window, and the night drifted in. Now we begin. Welcome and welcome again to the modern mystic. Tonight you are here, here and only here. This moment is a small lamp in the darkness, just for you, just for now. Let your day slide quietly away, like fog retreating from the field in the morning. Let your breath be the only thing you notice for a while, soft, slow, nothing but the rise and the fall. There is nothing left to do, nothing you must know. No time outside this gentle hour. Just the slow story of someone who moved even more slowly than this night. Tesla sits by the window in a room that smells of cold stone and candle wax. There is a hush, even in his mind. He waits for himself, for the quiet, secret feeling that something is about to begin, though nothing much has started yet. You're quietly invited to join him. No effort needed. Just the hum of a small flame, the weight of a worn coat on your shoulders, the sense that everything is fine as it is. He settles on a wooden chair. The candle flickers, almost nothing moves. Long fingers curl around a dull pencil. The night is his friend, and it can be yours too. He listens. The air is so still that even the scratch of graphite feels too loud. He pauses, lets out a breath, and waits. Sometimes he waits more than he works. Outside, the city sleeps unevenly, lamplight bleeding under doors and wind teasing loose shutters. But in here, there is only this: Tesla sketching by candlelight, a page, a pencil, and you. You can close your eyes. You can let go if you'd like. He will stay up a while, watching thoughts drift and settle like dust in a golden beam. Nothing is required. Just be here in this room of quiet rhythm. In the morning, Tesla opens his eyes carefully, as if the light might crack. The room is pale blue. Shadows rest gently on the walls, waiting for life to begin again, but not hurrying. He is a man in no rush. The spring outside is grey, reluctant, half awake. On the nightstand there is still a candle stub. On the sill, faint lines drawn in the mist where his breath pressed the glass during the night. He listens. Birds, yes, but softly, nothing showy. A kettle clinks as it's moved on the little stove. His toes curl against the cool wooden floor. The day isn't here yet, not really. He watches the world and lets it make the first move. He waits by the window. The steam rises. The street below is empty. He isn't alone, but he's not with anyone either. Sometimes he stands, just stands, enjoying the sensation of nothing happening at all. He wraps a blanket around his shoulders. He notices the grain in the floorboards, the slow warmth of his tea, the loose thread in his sleeve. Those things are the morning for him, and for a moment that could be all we need, too. Welcome, again, to the modern mystic. You're here now, drifting where mind turns quiet, where time never asks to be named. Fold yourself into the gentle hush, slow down. Breathe deeply together with me just for a while. Tonight, we move through fog with Nikola Tesla. We don't have to do anything special, only drift, like paper floating down a river. This isn't a lesson, just a soft remembering, as safe as old blankets, as steady as dusk. Candles blink along the walls, flame, flicker, then still. Shadows on wooden floorboards. The world seems simple in this slow, endless dark. If your thoughts are loud, let them be. Tesla's life glows quietly nearby. We move as slow as candle wax tonight. You get to rest as the room grows softer and softer. You found your way here to the modern mystic. Maybe you're tired. Maybe the weight of the day is too much to hold for another hour. Or maybe you simply want to move so slowly, nothing can catch you. Tonight, it's quiet. The world is ordinary, soft, and a little bit sacred. We'll walk the night together. Feel that gentle hush around you. Let your breath slow. Let your limbs settle. Nothing waits for you but rest. There is a story here, simple as rain against the window pane. It belongs to a man most have heard of, but tonight we aren't concerned with big inventions or sparks of genius. Tonight it's just a slow walk, candlelight, pencils dull from use, and Tesla alone, sketching quietly while the city drifts outside. You don't have to remember anything. You don't have to understand. Just let the images float by, easy, slow fog moving across the room. There is comfort in repetition. There are small details, plain and tired and true, the sound of candle wax pooling, the feel of paper under the ridge of a thumb, the steady presence of breath. Let it be boring. Let it be beautiful. That's all you need to do. He waited by the window. The city's dawn came shyly, cool gray slivers threading through worn curtains. Before invention, before fame, there was simply waking. Tesla's morning began not with noise, but with silence. The world outside, still hushed, seemed to breathe in time with every slow flutter of candlelight dying into the day. The blankets were thin, practical. He folded them, neat corners, ritual without thought. His feet sought the familiar patch of threadbare rug by the bedside. Nothing hurried him, not time, not ambition. It was coffee, or more often, water, cool from a chipped pitcher. He washed his face carefully, tracing the line of his jaw, feeling the shape of a day about to begin. The spoon clinked against the cup. Simple eggs, bread waiting by the window. Nothing fancy. Nothing more than what his body needed. He paused a long while, pressing his palms flat to the kitchen table. The wood was old, scarred. He listened. There is always enough unsaid in the mornings. The first sketches never came quickly. Paper waited, blank, forgiving. The candle stub left behind from the night before sent up a thin gray scent. Even when the light was gentle, Tesla reached for it, a familiar friend. He would draw slow, letting each line stretch out, soft as dusk spreading across the floor. It wasn't the work, it was the rhythm. Hands moving, breath slowing, nothing happened, and that was enough. Candlelight softened his edges. Tesla's days were woven of tasks so small they fell between the hours unnoticed. Brushing dust from his collar, tidying books even as he read them. Each cup placed deliberately on worn tabletop rings. The city outside shifted and pressed, but in here the world shrank to footsteps, small drawers sliding open, pencils lined in perfect rows. He would check his ink, pinch candlewick, sweep a pale rag over the desk. His shoes were always set side by side, evening, morning, all the same. Sensory repetition. Routine steeped deeper than memory. The scrape of chair legs, a page turned. When it rained, he'd open the narrow window just a crack, letting the peppery smell of wet stone drift in. Bread, left over from breakfast, became a late afternoon snack, often with little more than salt. He would eat slowly, turning the crust in his hand, absorbing each simple sensation. The candles burned lower, each flame another small, tender companion. Time spilled lazy over the floorboards. He waited by the window. He pressed his palm to cool glass, tracing idle patterns in fog. He measured nothing except the space between one breath and the next. Welcome, you found your way to the modern mystic. And here we are, just you, this gentle moment, and the quiet hush of a story you know, even if you don't remember. Let's place a blanket over the day. Let the edges of your mind soften like a candle's edge melting into the dark. There you are, and here we begin. The room is small, shuttered against the night. You can almost feel the hush, as if even the dust knows it's time to rest. Nikola Tesla sits, back bent, shoulders drawn in his coat, paper spread on the desk. The world outside is distant, lost in old shadows and soft wind. Tesla's hand moves. Slow, slow, a pencil dragging over paper, the scrape barely louder than the ticking of a clock. The world is not in a rush here, not in this sacred corner. You can hear it, the flicker of candle flame. His candle is old, melting slowly, pooling wax around its base. Sometimes he pauses, touches the matches, watches the wax drip, 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 packs air with silence as if each breath is a bell tolling in the dark. He waited by the window, let your thoughts drift, let them scatter like embers. He sketches by candlelight, nothing urgent, nothing hurried. Just the gentle discipline of being and remembering. The world does not intrude. Only the hum of electricity under the skin of night, the hush of graphite, the whisper of linen sleeves. He draws and rediscovers what matters. He is alone but not lonely, tired but at peace, wrapped in the slow logic of darkness, candle, paper, and the soft, ancient noticing of the ordinary life. The spoon clinked against the cup. He sits. He sketches. The rest of the world can wait. Welcome to the modern mystic. Tonight you're not in a hurry. No one needs you here. You don't need to change or grow or move quickly. You can be just as you are. Unrushed, unhurried, heavy with the softness of presence. Tesla sits at a desk, though you do not need to see him. Imagine the weight in your own limbs, the feeling that a single thread ties you to the bed, gentle, secure. The air is cool. The light is dim. A candle dances inside a glass, flickering. There's nothing urgent here, just the hush of paper and wax, the calm of distant raindrops finding their way down the window. It is quiet. You wander through late hours with an old friend who has only time for you, soft shoes on wood, a kettle left on a back burner, faint steam rising and swirling. The world outside is looking for sleep, and inside, so are you. This is a night that belongs to slowness, to the dignity of the mundane. Whispered memory, familiar hush, another log settling in the grate. Tonight, you are in the company of someone who loved the quiet, who courted it, who let it hold him like a favorite coat. Nikola Tesla, the man who watched shadows bend on the walls, the man who saw possibility in the ordinary, the man whose whole life was made up of tiny, deliberate habits. You are already slowing. Let your breath wander its own path. Nothing is expected of you. Not now. Perhaps you remember a soft chair, a night when the clock moved slowly, a table scratched and old. Maybe you crave that again, the simple hush, the kitchen light left on, footsteps muffled across the hallway. Tonight, Tesla is sketching by candlelight. There is no lesson to be learned, no summary to memorize. Only feeling, only the gentle rhythm of another life, lived quietly, one breath at a time. Let yourself do nothing now, slip into darkness at any moment. Tesla will keep the lamp burning. A velvet curtain moves as if a ghost has passed. Nothing changes. Nothing needs to. The modern mystic is your home tonight. We wait for dawn together. Welcome to the modern mystic, where the world turns slow and the air feels softly lit. There's room here for your tired breath, for the quiet you crave but barely name. Let the worries drift for a while. Let your shoulders settle deeper in the covers. Tonight, we'll linger somewhere between dusk and a single flickering flame. Let the old friend enter quietly, that figure in the corner, working long after everyone else is at rest, not because of glory, not for noise, but with steady hands and that calm, nervous rhythm that comes from belonging nowhere and everywhere. So hush now. No need to follow every word. Don't worry if your thoughts drift. That's the point. I'll be your company in this gentle fog tonight. We're finding Nikola Tesla, but not on a stage, not beneath the lightning, rather in the hush of a small lamp-lit room. He sits alone. He sketches by candlelight, a man in linen, a wisp of hair over his brow, his jacket draped over a chair, paper smooth against the table, and a single cup of tea cooling by his hand. He waits by the window, he sketches, and he listens not for applause or thunder, but for the hum beneath his own thoughts. Now, let's linger at the edge, where day becomes night. Tesla welcomes us inward. We're not here to solve or to learn, just to witness. Just to remember the shape of peace, even in a mind so restless. The candle flickers. The muse is in the stillness. Welcome, gentle traveler, to your place of soft surrender. You are here, listening with the modern mystic, where even the quietest moments matter. Tonight, you're invited to drift through the slow, sacred hours of Tesla's life. Not Tesla the inventor, nor Tesla the genius, but Tesla, the quiet soul who sketched by candlelight, fingertips smudged with graphite, dreams glowing softer than the wick itself. Let's let the world gently fade. Let each breath slow, like evening fog weaving its way through old stone streets. You do not need to do or remember anything. This is just for you, nothing more and nothing less. He closed the door to his small room, letting his shoulders settle beneath the weight of unremarkable twilight. Nothing stirred, not at first. He waited by the window. He listened to the hush that arrived before the candle was lit. His hands empty and patient. His table was old and honest. A single drawer, a chipped edge that caught light from the city's dull lamps beyond the window pane, a pile of folded paper, only half clean, a pencil rolling softly when he exhaled. Tonight was just like every other night, and that was more than enough. Each morning his feet found the floor bare wood, cool beneath the arch. He would pull the thin blanket closer to his chest, eyes still closed, listening for the song of sparrows from the tram wires outside. He lingered. Sometimes his dreams were full of light, shapes that did not make sense, yet always felt safe. He sat up slowly, never in a rush to escape the shell of sleep. He waited for the ache in his legs to drift away, and then pressed his palms to his eyes, pushing gently against the darkness there. The wash basin in the corner was cold, even in spring. He cupped cold water to his face, blinked it away. There was a cup beside the lamp for rinsing, chipped at the rim. He listened to how the water sounded, a lonely, hopeful echo in the quiet room. Nothing happened then, and nothing needed to. He waited by the window, watching a neighbor hang linens. The fabric moved like a flag, slow and weightless. He tried to remember what he had sketched last night. What slender thread of thought had wrapped itself around his finger and then slipped away into the darkness before dawn. Breakfast for him was a ritual, always the same. He would lay a cloth down not out of necessity, but as a marker of time. Bread, a little hard at the edges, butter, chilled and hard to spread. He enjoyed the scrape of the knife on the plate, a slice of apple slowly turning brown at the edges, but that never bothered him. He ate in silence. He let the tea cool before sipping. The steam rose and faded, curling like soft breath against the window. He counted the swirls, sometimes 3, other times 5. Numbers were comfort, gentle, predictable, like the tick of the small clock perched above the bureau. Shoes were placed side by the bed, a shirt folded and pressed. He smoothed the sleeves, pressing creases between thumb and forefinger. He liked when things were aligned, not perfect, just quietly in their place. He swept the floor with a short broom, gathering dust that had settled in the corners overnight. He liked the sound, the way the bristles brushed against wood, the gathering of what once was scattered. He waited by the window, watching city horses clop past, carriages rolling slow and steady. He was not eager for anything, not on mornings like these. Long ago, when the world still looked immense and he felt very small, he watched his mother mend things. In a kitchen not much larger than his own room now, he would press his head against her skirt, watching her hands work the needle, thread, pushing through cloth, each point of entry a tiny, mysterious door. He remembered the smell of bread rising, warmth pooling in the folds of her apron, a kettle humming, low and reliable on the stove. She smiled without saying much. She didn't speak in lessons, only gestures, passing him a slice of pear, or tucking stray hair behind his ear when the wind found them through the open window. He learned mostly by watching, by seeing how people moved through tasks, slow and careful, by noticing which way the shadows bent during the long afternoon hours. He remembered his father's boots, always polished, always waiting by the door, a symbol that leaving and returning mattered just the same. The smell of candle wax was everywhere, soft, golden, persistent. Life was an endless string of small, quiet tasks. He found comfort in that. He waited by the window, listening for the sounds of evening. Nothing happened, and that was a blessing. But not all silence was emptiness. Somewhere in that house, something bright was always tucked beneath boredom. He felt it in his feet and in his fingertips, a restlessness. A small glowing idea, never quite formed, a sense that there could be more. One evening, alone but not lonely, he took a stub of pencil from the kitchen drawer. There was no ceremony, no plan. Just a thin scrap of paper and the pulsing urge to make marks upon it. He stayed by the candle after supper, watched its light shimmer on the chipped mug by his side. He began to sketch crooked lines, a wheel, a spoon, the curve of steam rising from a kettle. The tip of the pencil danced, then hesitated. He liked that, the nearly invisible meeting between courage and uncertainty. He drew without thinking, letting quiet fill the empty spaces between shapes. He listened to his own heartbeat, a slow thrum beneath the ribcage, steady as rain tapping the pane. Nothing happened at first. The page filled, the candle burned lower. He waited by the window, watching the soft blue hush of dusk. There was suddenly possibility everywhere, hiding under the ordinariness of things. Seasons turned as they always do, whether we notice or not, and the weight of his days shifted slowly at first. Coffee replaced tea sometimes. He began walking farther in the mornings, tracing new paths through the city, always returning home in time for the light to slant gently through the far window. He spoke less, listened more. The lines he drew at night gained confidence, more sweeping arcs, fewer hesitations. Some days he watched the candle burn right down to the brass dish. He liked the way the wax puddled, hardened, left behind small translucent moons. He began saving those wax crescents in a small tin, stacked like fragile coins. The sketchbook grew thicker with pressed pages. Tucked into the back of the drawer, he dated each one in the top corner, softly, almost apologetically. On stormy nights, he worked by the fire for a change. Shadows grew longer, swallowing the edges of the room. He welcomed them, let them roll through, enveloping him in hush. He waited by the window, breathing in the world as it grew quiet and unhurried. Nothing called to him, not fame or finishing, but the motion of making, gentle and mysterious. That was enough. All things eventually become symbols. For him, it was a table, wide enough for sketches, not broad enough for many guests. He kept it clear except for a cup of pencils, a glass ink bottle, a saucer for candle wax, and the stack of folded papers. The wood was worn smooth, especially near the spot where his left elbow rested. Whenever he felt lost or heavy, he settled at the table, tracing his fingers along its grain, feeling its steady familiarity. He noticed how the candlelight played along the ridges, how it left behind narrow rivers of gold. The table was his anchor, his haven from the busy world pressing at the door. Sometimes he would close his eyes, putting his face in his palms, letting the scent of wood and wax pull him back to himself. It was always there, waiting, unassuming, patient. He felt seen, even in solitude. He waited by the window, table behind him, knowing this simple steadiness was its own kind of wealth. Nothing happened, only an old table, a quiet soul, and candlelight breathing against the walls. There are days worth telling, and days barely worth a word, but most are somewhere in between. Let's imagine one of his ordinary days, slow, repetitive, quietly holy. He woke before the sun, not out of discipline, but because dreams didn't linger. Blanket folded at the foot of his bed, slippers found by touch in the dawn blue gloom. He washed, dressed, and made breakfast, always bread and a small wedge of cheese, apple on the side, tea, strong, with exactly 3 spoonfuls of sugar. The kettle sang. He waited for the exact moment the steam clouded his spectacles. He ate at the window, following strangers passing below, their breath rising like ghosts on the morning chill. He tidied the room, the broom catching cold grains of sand dragged in from the street. He sorted his pencils by length, replaced the stubbiest in the mug, and shook graphite dust from the table into his palm, releasing it through a gap in the floorboards. Letters arrived sometimes. He opened them slowly, reading each word twice, fingers trailing over the paper. He wrote replies with the same careful quiet, thanking, always, and never hurrying. By midday, he walked to the park, watching children chase hoops and pigeons scatter along cobbles. Lunch was a heel of bread wrapped in brown paper, eaten on a bench beneath a linden tree. He returned as the shadows shifted, worked at his table, sketching cogs, levers, mysterious forms that never asked to be named. Candle was lit as the sky went rose-grey. Dinner was simple, a bowl of broth with carrots and a thick slice of bread. He washed up, read one poem, usually the same, letting the rhythm lull his mind. He waited by the window, letting evening fold in, tender as an old coat. Nothing happened. The room was enough. The quiet was enough. There are shadows we cradle, even when we try to let them go. He had his own, soft and shrouded. The world expected much, but he answered softly. He worried about time slipping by, about ideas half-formed and quietly lost. Loneliness sometimes pressed at his chest, especially when the streets outside fell silent. He often wondered if his sketches mattered, if the lines he stayed up late to draw would ever mean anything. But he kept drawing, even while doubt lingered. He repeated his little rituals, letting them soothe the ache beneath the thoughts. He waited by the window, letting the landscape blur, letting his uncertainties drift to the edge of the lamplight. Nothing happened, except the return of quiet, again and again. To others he was pleasant, if distant. He smiled politely, nodded in greeting, listened more than he ever spoke. Those who sat with him in the evening said he calmed the room, made the air slow, the shadows thick and soft. Children liked him because he did not ask too much, did not fuss. Neighbors thought him odd, in a gentle way. They felt comfortable letting silences stretch, each pause holding the possibility of something sacred, even if nothing was said at all. His friends, few but loyal, felt heard, not hurried. They said he breathed calm into the spaces between worries, wrapped the world's quickness in a blanket of slow light. He waited by the window even when company filled the room. He allowed the hush to settle, unafraid of lulls in conversation. Nothing happened, and their hearts felt lighter for it. But seasons shift, as they always do, and the busiest candles eventually burn low. He found himself moving slower, legs not as quick to carry him through the city's pulse. He stayed indoors more, letting drafts curl in through the window, letting the wool blanket rest against his knees longer each afternoon. Sketches grew softer, lines less urgent. He found peace in doing less, finding beauty in shadowed corners and the simple flavor of a single orange cut into quarters. He still tended to his table, still welcomed the waxy scent when candle met fire. But he watched more than he wrote, noticed more than he needed to name. He waited by the window, letting each dusk linger, welcoming the world's hush like an old friend returned. Nothing happened, and the world turned gently on. It's time for rest now. Let the hush gather at your own window. Let the gentle repetition of simple things hold you, just as they held him. Cup, candle, table, slow night. You are home here. Wherever you are, may you remember with each return that nothing needs to happen tonight except the slow unfolding of quiet. Rest easy, dear soul. Nothing happens, and that is everything. Tonight, on the Modern Mystic, I'll walk with you through the soft, secret hours, the hours when the world is almost silent, when all the bright questions of the day have faded into candlelight. Welcome, gentle soul. Bring your weight, your weariness, your scattered pieces. Set them beside the soft glow. There's nothing to do here, and nowhere to be but simply what you are. You made it, you're here, you are in the company of quietness. Think of the silence as an old friend, waiting patiently. It knows you just as you are. Nothing needs fixing tonight. This story is just for you. Let's go back together to a time when the world was slower, when the city outside was only a shadow behind velvet curtains, and a single candle was enough light to last the night. Tonight, we remember Nikola Tesla not as a monument, not as a battle, but as a man quietly sketching by candlelight. Imagine, on the table before him, scattered papers weigh themselves down with ink and hope. A wooden chair creaks, the candle flickers. You can almost hear the scratch of graphite. The hush of a lonely room holding its breath. Breathe deeply. Here nothing will hurry you. Not a single word. He sat by the window, dust floated in gold and shadow, and the world waited with him, unmoving. Let the edges of your mind soften like candle wax. Begin again with me. This is where we start. Tonight, as you close your eyes under a blanket you've known for a long time, you're invited to rest with me. There's no need to try. The night itself will hold you now. Here, in this slow, gentle space, I'll walk with you through the quiet hours, as together we drift beside Nikola Tesla, who once sketched by candlelight, not to impress, only to be with his own strange thoughts and froth in shadows. There's no hurry. Each word falls slow and ordinary, like rain on the roof, gentle, quiet, and forgettable. The world narrows now to the little things. You found your way to the modern mystic, and you belong here. The world is smaller at night. Blankets become soft walls. The faintest glow casts 1,000 more possibilities on the ceiling. As you settle, simple and safe, the edges of your day begin to blur. Tonight's story isn't history. It's a soft invitation. For a slow walk, for the small comforts of tea and paper and light, for sitting by a window in a room that could have been Tesla's, or could have been yours. He never rushed, not really. You won't need to either. Nothing clever here, only a voice, slow as winter dusk, soft as a folded shirt by the door. You can breathe now. Tesla waits for us by the desk. The candle is already lit. He waits by the window. Morning came quietly to Tesla, the sun shy, as if not wanting to disturb the long blue quiet clinging to the corners of his room. One thin ray crept through the curtain, tumbling across his notebook, waking paper from its sleep. The air was gentle and still, not cold, not warm, simply there, like the taste of water before your first sip. He stayed under the covers a moment longer than usual, not because he was tired, only because the dawn felt unhurried. Outside, a horse-drawn carriage shuffled somewhere beyond the window. The click of heavy shoes, a cough, then nothing again. Sometimes the world made lovely noises if you listened for the spaces between. Tesla stretched, careful not to lift the blanket too fast. The day lay ahead, folded and ordinary. He sat up, toes catching the edge of a rough-woven rug. His dark coat, left on the chair, still held the shape of his shoulders. He moved slow, making sure the floorboards didn't complain tonight. The room was small, filled with echoes, soft, shy echoes. He lit a match with practiced hands. The flame caught slowly, waiting for the tiny hush that only a single candle gives. Shadows moved, lazy and long. He placed the candle near the window, beside a thin bowl of water. Names and numbers drifted through his mind with no hurry. There would be time for every small thing. The spoon clinked against the cup in these gentle hours, rituals unfolded, never forced. Each page was turned because it wanted to be. Tesla's fingers, thin and fragile, carried the shape of so many mornings. Tea waited in a chipped mug. The sound of the kettle always the same. It stuttered and sighed, filling the room with mist, small, clinging clouds tumbling toward the ceiling. He wrapped his hands around the cup, grateful for its warmth. Steam tickled his nose. He waited by the window. The street was still, grey and blurred, a world almost dreaming. He took his breakfast quietly, bread torn apart, piece by piece, never in a rush. Every crumb had its purpose, every sip invited thought. He heard the soft hum of his own breath, the easy rhythm of mornings untouched by urgency. A quiet corner of his mind wandered, following the shape of a candle's shadow, how it stretched and folded, then faded and returned again. He studied the way butter softened, slow, melting into the slice, gold against fluff, cooling tea. A world made of little things. Nothing happened, and that was enough. Papers waited on the desk, each sheet a field unexplored, the whispering invitation of blankness. He smoothed one with careful hands, the edge catching on a hangnail, pencil waiting. Every line drew out another gentle breath. Sometimes he paused just to watch the graphite glimmer in candlelight, the familiar glint of hope, small and almost secret. There was never much noise before noon. He finished his tea in slow sips. The world, his world, remained a pocket of patience inside a hurried city. All that mattered was this: the comfort of measured footsteps, the slowness of a perfectly boring morning, the sense that nothing would rush him, and that even the clock itself might fall back to sleep just for a little while. He watched the shadows gather near the door. There was always order to Tesla's days, a quiet devotion to repetition, a sweet, invisible dance between old habits and new ideas. He made the bed, smoothing the sheets down, careful not to wrinkle the coverlet. The way the pillow folded, the crease of the blanket, it mattered more than anyone else might guess. He dressed piece by piece. Shirt first, sleeves rolled slowly. The collar rested against his throat, starched and cool. Waistcoat always buttoned top to bottom, not the other way round. He ran a finger along each seam, checking. His shoes greeted him with their muted leather sigh. Laces tied carefully twice. No hurry, no light wasted. A soft brush swept the dust from his jacket's lapel. The same jacket, day after ordinary day. He combed his hair by the dim glass, counting each pass as if it were the only way he could show up for this day. The water in the bowl grew still. He rinsed his hands, noticing the way droplets clung to his knuckles, fingers that remembered every drawing, every failed invention, every spark of wonder beneath skin and bone. He looked in the mirror, finding not invention or genius, but patience. He waited for the reflection to blur, a trick his mind had played with for years. Only when the mirror softened did he feel ready for the world outside his room. He watched himself hesitate at the door, listening as the candle flickered behind him. There was always enough time. He closed the door softly. He waited by the window, walking downstairs. He listened for creaks and remembered which step to skip. Smelled bread from somewhere, or maybe just the memory of it. Before facing people, before conversation, he would take a moment. An extra second on the stair, a gentle pause, breathing in the hush before the day unfolded. He chose smaller streets, moving through morning air, hat brim just low enough to keep out the chill. He noticed how dew pooled in cobblestones, how voices blurred into a single, distant hum. He moved slow enough not to disturb even the smallest puddle. At cafe doors, he'd hold the handle a moment too long, feeling the wood, its rough edge under his palm. Every habit belonged to another, smaller world. He returned, as always, to his desk, his sanctuary. The candle, still burning, welcomed him home. Paper, pencil, a cup gone cold. He sat just as he had 100 mornings before. Nothing happened, and that was enough. The chair waited for him in silence. Not all influences begin with thunder. For Tesla, small details shaped everything. A look his mother gave him across a candlelit table, the smell of wool drying by the fire, how bread, left too long, grew hard and sweet at the edges, reminding him that even ordinary things could surprise. He found solace in watching others quietly, noticing how fingers curled around books or how someone lingered before stepping into rain. He learned, whether by the tilt of an umbrella, the feel of cold air sneaking through a crack in the window. Even as a child, he listened to the music of footfalls on long hallways, the ones nobody hurried down. He waited by the window. Daydreams arrived like stray cats, soft and patient. Tesla would lose himself in the wall of wood grain, the slow swirl of cream in steaming tea, the way warmth clung to a cup long after the tea was gone. He watched the world in pieces, clouded glass, drifting dust, the echo of his mother humming in another room. She believed in ordinary magic, keeping bread fresh, folding linens, lighting a single candle against the dusk. To her, daily chores became rituals, to him, something holy. As the candle burned low, he would sit, letting thoughts shuffle by, never asking them to walk faster, wondering how shadows learned to move against old walls. Everything arrived quietly, never forced. Not all lessons came from books. Some came from careful looking, silent pauses, the language of everyday hands. He counted seconds as a child, measuring rain with open palms, wondered if numbers could sing. And so his mind learned patience before it learned brilliance. He watched butter melt on bread before invention named him, before concepts or machines or headlines. There was this small spark, nearly invisible to anyone else. Tesla noticed how candle wax pooled, how light could bend, how paper once marked was forever changed. One evening, alone before sleep, he watched the end of a burnt wick quiver. How, in the dim, it seemed to split the dark. He found himself wanting to catch that trick of light, to understand it, hold it, maybe shape it with his own hands. A desire, not for attention, but for the feeling of watching the world reveal something unexpected. He wondered if a sketch could capture the feeling, not just the image. If a page could hold the hush of a room, the slow hope of a single flame. Even then, he needed nothing loud. Just the slow turn of heart toward wonder. He waited by the window. Days slipped like quiet rivers, but sometimes something would turn. A moment, soft as cloth, that shifted the pattern. Tesla lingered longer over a candle, drew one sketch, then 100. Each line a question, a hope, a waiting. There was no rush. He found a slower rhythm. The world outside might quicken, but here, in this borrowed twilight, time had its own rules. The turning was never about fame or victory, only a new patience, a way of letting curiosity last longer than the flame. He learned to welcome the things he didn't know. Each evening, the shadows grew longer, the hush fell deeper. He felt a gentle pull, quiet as the lifting of a shutter. No thunder, no music, just the slow certainty that deeper feeling, more than cleverness, was what mattered most. He waited by the window. Some objects become maps for memory. For Tesla, it was always the desk, that sturdy, worn table where dreams gathered in the edges of candlelight. The legs a little uneven, one drawer always sticky. the smell of graphite and ink mixing with the sweet tang of melted wax. It wasn't elegant, but every groove, every stain belonged to him. Here the world could be quiet. Here nothing rushed. Here the flame, the page, the empty mug, all had their places and their silences. He placed his hand flat on the wood, feeling the steady pulse beneath the surface, the unseen story of every small thing. Even the candle, guttering at the end of its wick, became a friend, never quite finished. He traced with a fingertip the tiny scar where inkwell spilled years ago, watched as the desk caught each ray of candlelight, each soft movement of his pencil. He let the desk become a map he traveled, night after gentle night. It never offered answers, only a place to listen. He waited by the window. A typical day for Tesla was quiet, blessedly so. He woke before sunrise, waiting for the candle to melt its first river of wax. Sat in the heavy silence, turning bread in his hand, breaking it with careful thought. He'd let the room bloom with small flavors, bitter tea, warm crust, cool air wandering in from a half-open window. He waited by the window, clothes chosen, coat shrugged over shoulders. He'd mark time with simple movements. No hour was wasted. At the desk, sketches unfurled slowly. None aimed for greatness. Each line drawn for the sake of the line. He would stare into the candle, searching for the world inside wax and flame. And then he'd lose himself in the drawing, the graphite soft as ash against old paper. Shadows crossed the desk. Tea cooled. Nothing happened, and that was enough. Lunch was quiet, sometimes soft bread with cheese, sometimes nothing but air. The day passed in gentle pulses. He'd pace, counting steps, pausing to watch the city outside. He'd let letters gather in a pile, only reading them when dusk slipped through heavy curtains. Evening brought more candlelight, softer sketches, tired hands. He'd listen for the bell of a church blocks away, the hour felt, not measured. Some days he would barely speak, only breathe, only notice. He waited by the window, feelings rarely gave their secrets freely. Tesla carried a hush few understood, the weight of wanting more time, more quiet, more answers hidden in the blue murk of thought. Often he felt things too much, like the crumble of stale bread, the memory of a mother's voice in the dark, or the ache that came from wondering if he belonged more to the night than to the noisy world. He sat at his desk and let the ache pass through his knuckles. Sometimes his sketches felt only half real, the candle too dim to explain what he really felt. He wrote his questions in the margins, then closed the notebook, leaving them for another day. Regret visited as gently as the moths at the window. Still, he kept drawing, even when the lines meant nothing to anyone else. He let loneliness slow the pace, reminding him that even silence could be soft. He waited by the window. Others always felt a strangeness about him. Some called it genius, others called it distance. In truth, there was a warmth, gentle and slow burning, beneath his quiet. Those who stood near him sensed the weight of his listening. Conversations with Tesla were never loud, never hasty. He repeated words, letting them linger, looping back softly so each meaning had time to settle. He'd smile just at the corner, inviting calm. Visitors would leave, unsure if anything important had happened. Yet they missed his room, its hush, the low golden light. Friends felt safe, even bored, in his presence. They remembered the patient way he touched every object, his habit of moving cups before speaking. People left changed, though they never quite noticed how, until much later, when ordinary life felt a little more sacred. a little more passable. He waited by the window in every life season's slow. For Tesla, it came on so quietly he barely noticed. The candle burned a little lower, pages filled slower. Some mornings the air seemed heavier, the kettle boiling later than before. He waited by the window. He found comfort in the smallest routines. Waking meant listening for the distant city, quiet as a shell pressed to the ear. Meals grew simpler, bread, jam, a single cup of tea. Time thickened between the hours. His letters stayed unopened, shadows gathered on the old desk. He let himself rest more often. The world expected little now. He gave even less. The city outside his window moved faster. He did not chase it. Instead, he chose to linger, to let dusk find him before he moved to light the candle. Fewer sketches, more stillness. He gave attention to the wax as it pooled, to the smell of old paper. The room became smaller. Silence settled deeper. He exhaled long and slow. Nothing happened, and that was enough. He waited by the window now. Night is here, and the candle grows short. You are safe with Tesla, with me, with the soft and ordinary dark. The day is over. Bread crumbs linger on the plate. The mug is empty, the window closed against the chill. The old desk, faithful and familiar, holds only paper, a stub of pencil, a few lines left undrawn. You can close your eyes, let every slow word dissolve. Let silence gather, let the weight of blankets remind you you have already arrived. You are not expected to move quickly, not expected to do or change, only to rest. He waits by the window, we whisper together, nothing happened, and that was enough. Sleep easy, friend, sleep slow, sleep long, sleep deep. The candle can be blown out now. The modern mystic is with you until morning comes. Hello, friend, you found your way to the modern mystic. This is just the beginning. Drift softly, let's step carefully together into a quiet that remembers. Tonight, we enter the gentle, flickering world of Tesla. Not Tesla the genius, not Tesla the myth, just Tesla. Just a person with slow hands, a tired body, and candlelight on old paper. Imagine him tucked deep in a shadowy room. Outside, the rain pings lightly against windows. Inside, night pours slowly, gentle and thick, around wooden floorboards and stacks of worn notebooks. You arrive as if in a half-remembered dream, the kind you can return to, even if you've just begun drifting away. There is no rush here. Let your breathing slow. You can sit with Tesla now, not in the busy ways of the world, not in the noise, but in the hush that comes before sleep. He sits by a small table. Spread before him is paper that only just holds its shape, yellowed at the corners and softened by time. The flame of his candle dances, swaying, bowing, lulling the shadows back and forth across the walls. The smell of wax and old ink is thick and pleasant, almost edible somewhere. A kettle murmurs on the stove. His chair creaks with every small movement, a quiet, familiar sound, like a heartbeat slowing at dusk. You are safe here. All around are the comforts of the ordinary, the hush of night, the scratch of pencil, a blanket pulled tight across shoulders. The world outside can wait, it always does. He waits by the window tonight. There is no invention and no need to explain. Just the slow drawing of lines, soft hands tracing out dreams in the dim, flickering light. Every motion, a kind of remembering, every pause, a promise that nothing important can ever be rushed. Nothing happens, and that is enough. Welcome, gentle soul. Tonight on the Modern Mystic, we drift into the quiet world of Nikola Tesla, as slow as dusk threading itself through your window. It's late. The room is dim. There's a small, sturdy table, edges worn down by patient hands. On that table, a candle burns, its flame bending with each draught, tugging the shadows long and soft below the edges of his notes. Tesla sits, not as a genius in the glare of invention, but as a quiet man searching for the shape of his thoughts in a world too quick, too bright. He lifts a pencil, tracing the faintest lines across old paper. You settle in, sinking lightly into your bedding, not because there's a story to chase, but because there's nothing urgent here. Not anymore. Let your thoughts move slower than the wax, softening in the candle dish. Out in the hallway, shoes sleep under a bench. Curtains fold the moonlight in half. Tea cools beside the bed, untouched. Tesla sketches, and time itself slows down to watch. Let all the hours before this one drift away. He breathes in. You breathe in. There is only the hush of pencil to paper and the forgiving hush of the night. Nothing to remember, nothing to become. Just a man, candlelight, a sketch, and the quiet promise that you are safe here and always have been. The flame flickers. You wait. Night comes. Gentle soul. We're only walking through fog with an old friend. Watch the candle. Drift. Hello. You found your way to the modern mystic. This is for you, right now. There are no right answers here, only slow remembering. Only the sound of a life traced gently like a finger along old wood. Let's find the quiet together. The quiet in a night that could be anyone's night, any year, any country, where Nikola Tesla sits alone, his head bent to a piece of paper, in a room with no hard edges. You belong here simply by listening. No hurry. Everything in its time. There is a story, and it moves slower than sleep, like walking through fog with an old friend. Tonight, the candle burns low, and Tesla sketches the world as he wishes it could be. You don't need to understand it, you just need to rest. To let these words draw you under like soft wool. A cup rests on the table. The window leaks its quiet gray light. Nothing happens, and that is enough. The morning is quiet in Tesla's world. Always quiet, even when the city wakes. The light creeps across cracked floorboards, finding dust, finding his shoes by the door, lined up and ready, always ready. Somewhere a kettle sighs. He sits upright, still as a coat on a hook, watching the steam curl. Shoes on, ankles crossed. A slow breath in, a slow breath out. Tesla notices the way the light slips through the curtains. The city beyond never touches him here. The spoon clinks against the cup, drawing circles in sweet, pale tea. The paper on the desk waits for his hand. He waits for nothing, and still the day comes, unhurried, light on its feet, like a cat passing through the room. He pours more tea. He listens to its gentle trickle. He's in no rush to drink it. He likes to hold the cup just for warmth. Sometimes he sets it down, lets his fingers cool, then picks it up again. Even the warmth cycles, coming and going, coming and going. He waited by the window, nothing happens, and that is enough. Every day, Tesla's steps look the same from the outside. But from the inside, like water running over the same stones, they shift, shimmer. He picks the simplest bread, buttered and dense, for breakfast. He likes food he can hold in one hand, of food that asks nothing of him. A napkin folded once, salt spilled on the side by accident. He brushes it away gently, the grains scattering. He takes his time with everything. Slow, slow, then slower. The desk must be clear before he begins. He stacks old sketches in a neat pile, pages curling at the edge. A candle stub crouches in a brass holder, glimmering with yesterday's wax. His pencil is always sharpened, but never too sharp, just blunt enough to smudge. He opens a small window for the air. Cold seeps in with a sigh. Nothing moves. Paper rests untouched. The spoon clinked against the cup. Nothing happened, and that was enough. Long before cities, long before electric dreams, Tesla lived in the hush of mountains. He remembers rifles on the wall, the sharp smell of wood smoke, his mother's hands kneading bread. Somewhere, water moved beneath the ice, the ghost of a river talking to itself. He learned silence from her, from watching her work by lamplight, sewing and mending, mending and sewing, small things done with care. He watched the way she handled broken things, never throwing them out, never in a hurry to mend what was torn. The crackle of logs in a tiled stove filled long evenings. As a boy, he'd lie awake, counting breaths, tracing shadows across the ceiling. Listening for owls and distant thunder, he always listened for what wasn't there, what might come next. He waited by the window, nothing happened, and that was enough. Desire came as a flicker, sharper than hunger but softer than longing. Sometimes it arrived in the taste of metal, cold, coin-bright, at the tip of his tongue. Sometimes it was only a pattern in the fog on the glass, a shape that made him sit up straighter, breathe deeper. He did not crave fame or gold. He wanted to know. He wanted to see how things fit together, wire and rain, stone and lightning, hope and disappointment. He wondered about invisible things, the closeness of a secret just before it's spoken. He wondered about light behind the light, the electricity in the wall or the warmth in the bread. Other boys wanted firecrackers. Tesla wanted the match. He wanted the moment just before fire knew itself, that slow, pregnant hush. That was his first spark. The candle flickered, waiting for his hand. Nothing happened, and that was enough. Change comes softly. Never a thunderclap, always the slow fog rolling in, muting shapes. For Tesla, the turn was not a decision, but a series of moments. He would set his cup down, pause, then pick up another pencil. He allowed the day to change him, just as air changes the smell of a room. One morning, the sketches grew more confident, darker, more certain. His hand repeated the same line again and again, as if testing the weight of it. His eyes blurred, unfocused. He let the patterns float before him, tracing circuits in the air. Hours slipped away. The candle leaned low. Ash collected in the saucer. Still he moved slowly. Nothing rushed. Ideas needed soft corners, room to swell and settle like dough. He watched the wax melt, waiting for what would rise next. He waited by the window, nothing happened, and that was enough. If Tesla was shaped by anything, it was his desk, small, scarred, with dovetail joints and water stains. The wood was lighter on the right, worn from years of resting his hand there. The desk held everything. A globe, a blunt ruler, graphite dust in the corners. Sometimes he would close his eyes and run his fingers along the finish, feeling every groove. The sound of the chair's creak was its own comfort, a lullaby. Above the desk, a single shelf leaned, overloaded with books. Candle wax dripped onto the edge. Sometimes he'd scratch it away with a thumbnail, letting the flakes gather in his palm. The desk never changed. Only the pictures that grew across it. Only the light that came and went. He thought of it as a friend, as steady as bread, as honest as a nail in the wall. He waited by the desk. Nothing happened, and that was enough. A full day in Tesla's life was a gentle thing. He woke before most, moving without sound into the half-light. Tea first, then stretches by the window, back and forth, side to side. There was no music, only the heartbeat of the house and the slow grumble of pipes. Breakfast came late, just past the first bell. He liked it simple, thick bread, sometimes a boiled egg, always eaten alone. Afterward, he'd take to his desk, sketching until the lines blurred. He wrote in a slow, looping hand, notes only he could read. He liked to pause between sentences, letting silence build. Lunch meant a walk, 2 laps around the square, always counting the steps. He noticed how his shoes felt, how the air bit his skin. Sometimes he'd pause by the bakery to smell the bread, thick with yeast. Sometimes he'd buy a roll and tear it, piece by piece, letting the crumbs fall. In the afternoon, the candle flickered on. Shadows stretched across his desk. He'd lean forward, hands steady, drawing shapes that only made sense to him. Lines became circuits, circuits became memories. He did not rush. Dinner came just before dusk. A bowl of thin soup, a slice of hard cheese, maybe some dried figs if he felt daring. Evenings were the slowest, mending a cuff, pacing the room, counting the cracks in the ceiling. Before sleep, one last cup of tea. Curtains closed, candle snuffed between 2 fingers. He waited by the window, nothing happened, and that was enough. Tesla's struggles were subtle, worn thin like the elbows of his coat. He carried worry quietly, like a stone in his pocket. Sometimes, alone at night, signals would crowd his head, ideas, memories, questions with no answers. He tried to untangle them, one by one, but they never fully eased. He wondered if he should be further along, if his work was enough, if his quiet was a blessing or a curse. Sometimes, thinking of his mother, he let himself rest. Most nights he brooded with the candle, watching the flame waver when he breathed too close. Soft footsteps, cold floor, the weight of solitude, the comfort of routine. He waited for reassurance in the way the pencil moved, the way the wax cooled. He waited for a gentle word, but the house was silent. The spoon clinked against the cup, nothing happened, and that was enough. To be near Tesla was